All right, guys, welcome into the Alabama postgame show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. I'm Simone Eli alongside Ben Flanagan. Ben, this one just went final in Knoxville, 52-49. Tennessee wins in a game-winning field goal, 40 yards out for the Volunteers to win as time expires. Wow. I'm still trying to catch my breath after watching this from several miles away. Just an unbelievable game to watch this unfold. Tennessee gets it done for the first time ever against a Nick Saban-led Alabama team.
Look, I can smell the mushroom cloud of cigar smoke that's probably ruminating from Neyland Stadium up there in Knoxville. Look, I remember when I had my first cigar too, so congratulations to the Tennessee fans. This is a long time coming. Simone, look, I took my daughter to a pumpkin patch this morning. I looked around, I saw the orange. I thought I was in Knoxville already at the pumpkin patch. So maybe it was a bad omen from the start. But, you know, I was trying to escape the fraught anticipation of this game and a potential Tennessee upset with autumnal solace, a fall family outing. We were really just delaying the inevitable. I mean, look, Saban said it at halftime. Alabama played as poorly as they could have in the first half, even if they cut the lead to 8 points at the break. And look, I mean, all week it's been, this is it, right? Yeah. Tennessee is going to do it. This is the year. Their high-powered offense is going to be too much for Alabama. They're going to pull off the upset and end the streak. And Alabama heard it all week. They said this is a business trip. And at the start of the game, they just sort of let it happen. It was an amazing atmosphere. Tennessee had a great, amazing game plan to attack Alabama on both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think in the end, Alabama fans are just going to look back on this as the penalty game. Like, were there questionable calls? Sure. Yes. But I don't think any one or two calls lost it for Alabama, depending on how you might look at that pass interference call at the end, where it seemed like Alabama had the game won. But 17 penalties for 130 yards. I mean, how do you win when you do that?
And this isn't the first game where there's been penalty issues. And we'll talk about the officials. I know there's a lot of comments so far when it comes to the referees, and totally understand frustrating moments, and there certainly was. But I think Alabama put themselves in a lot of situations that were frustrating as well. One of them was a huge deficit to start this game, an 18-point deficit in the first half, Ben. And it's easy to look at the end of the game and to look at Will Riker's miss and to look at the final throw there by Hooker to get down near the goal line, or at least inside to make it a 40-yard field goal there. But when you look at the start of this game, Alabama did not do themselves any favors by getting in the hole that they did.
No, absolutely not. And they knew what was coming. I mean, Tennessee has the best offense in the country. I mean, look at the stats. They're right up there. And Alabama's got a great defense too. But look, it's 2022. We all know, and this is why Alabama had to adjust to the modern offense that they've been running for the past decade or so. Great offense is going to beat great defense, no matter if you have Will Anderson, no matter if you have guys like Henry To'oTo'o, who they played a great game, even though, I mean, Alabama gave up as many points as they did. They made crucial stops when they needed to. And these days, you just need to make enough stops. You need to prevent enough big plays. And Alabama could not stop explosive plays from Tennessee today. But really, I mean, on top of the explosive plays, you talk about 7 penalties for 54 yards in the first quarter alone. That's just in the first quarter. I mean, that's a bad game's worth of penalties, and you did it in one quarter. So, I mean, we can look at the end of the game at how many they had, which was an astronomical figure, a new school record. And again, you can't win that way. And you have to, I mean, you've got to shore up on the disciplinary situations and reactions and performance with this Alabama team. It's really been a problem for Alabama the last several years under Saban. I mean, this is not just a one-time thing. This is an alarming pattern.
Yeah, let's talk about the Alabama defense right now. First of all, giving up 52 on the road, they're giving up 52 in general, not something that you typically have seen in recent years in Saban-led Alabama teams, especially on the defensive side. Jalen Hyatt alone, 5 touchdown passes, or receptions rather, on 6 receptions. It's an unbelievable performance by him. We start to wonder about the Bama secondary, but there's a lot more to a defense than just the secondary. Getting pressure on Hendon Hooker. This is a guy who is, in Heisman consideration, had a Heisman-like game. There's a lot of different parts to being successful defensively, but there were some moments where it seemed like Hyatt in particular was able to get behind safety or get behind defense, it kind of right up the field at times.
Yeah, look, we can call this the Jalen Hyatt segment if you want to. I mean, a
Yeah.
36-yard touchdown, a 60-yard touchdown, a 78-yard touchdown, and the 78-yard touchdown, that's when Alabama pinned them deep within their own 10, right? It didn't matter. They went 94 yards in 3 plays, and
Yeah.
most of it obviously on that touchdown, but they lit Alabama up on explosive plays. And you mentioned mostly exploiting matchups between the, Alabama's safeties, Tennessee's receivers, primarily Jalen Hyatt, obviously. And listen, entering the game, statistically, Alabama had one of the best defenses in the country. But in 2022, like I just said, better offense is going to beat better defense. It doesn't matter when you have the superstars that Alabama has, and they are talented from top to bottom across that defensive unit. It just comes down to, can you make enough stops? Can you prevent those explosive plays? Like, teams are going to score, especially the best offense in the country. And but look, Alabama, they did also make plays too. I mean, Dallas Turner's fumble recovery. It was did you see that CBS graphic? It was Alabama's 56th non-offensive touchdown since 2015. Like, that is sick. And I want to say that 66% of that happened in 2016 because that team was absolutely stupid. But so they made a few plays, but you're right. You hit it on the head. Didn't get enough pressure on Hendon Hooker when it mattered, right? He had clean pockets. He made some plays with his feet. He found his best receiver for enormous plays. That was just too much for Alabama to overcome. And really, the hole that Alabama dug itself early in the game was probably just too much for it to overcome for 60 minutes.
Yeah, and it's true. And credit to Tennessee. I mean, honestly, to weather that emotional storm, especially, in under 8 minutes there to pick that. I mean, there's just a bad play situation. Hendon Hooker, I don't know what he wanted to do with the ball in that moment. It wasn't so much Alabama forcing a turnover as well. It was self-inflicted when it came to Tennessee. But what I want to talk about briefly, Ben, is this: Alabama's last offensive drive. Okay, it seemed like Alabama should have been able to kick a field goal attempt as time expired. And for some reason, that is not how it went down. And again, we can all sit here as the armchair quarterbacks and not as the coaches and criticize what the play calls were and things of that nature. But if you look back at what the play calls were, okay, it was a lot of pass attempts. Obviously, we know the clock is not going to stop an incomplete, or the clock stops an incomplete pass. So we're not killing the clock there in that moment. I just felt like there was a lot of just kind of unraveled quickly. Next thing you know, Tennessee has the ball. They're going the other direction. And 30 yards later, they're kicking a field goal to win. It just seemed like, how did this get to that point?
Absolutely. And I mean, that's been a big concern for Alabama fans all season, right? Bill O'Brien's play calling. Look, it was going great for a while. Alabama seemed to have them right where they wanted. They were driving. Bryce Young's third down completion to Ja'Cory Brooks with 45 seconds left. That was a huge play. It put Alabama in field goal range. And so you thought, and Gary Danielson even said it, which I know is Gary's the bane of Alabama fans' existence sometimes when they're watching the games. But he made a great point. Alabama had 2 timeouts. They can afford to run the ball. They've got a game breaker in Jahmyr Gibbs who can pop off on any play. He could score at that point, or he could at least get you the yardage you need to get closer, to churn clock, to make Tennessee use their timeouts too, and put Will Reichert in a better position to win the game for Alabama, like you said, as time expired. So, it had you scratching your head. They could run the ball. They throw some passes that really look like Bryce Young was just kind of throwing it away at times. Especially to Cameron Latu along the sideline there. Jahmyr Gibbs had his fingertips on a ball that was just out of reach. It was a tough throw. It would have been an amazing play by him had he caught that and Alabama been able to convert. They probably win the game if he makes that catch. But head-scratching stuff.
Truly it was. Let's talk about Jahmyr Gibbs and his performance. This is a guy who honestly has been just dynamite all season. And it's crazy to think that, what the transfer portal has been able to do, not only for programs all around the country, but for Alabama right here in Jahmyr Gibbs and his abilities. I mean, 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards on the day. I haven't even looked at his receiving yards, another 48 there in the air. But this is a guy who is just so dynamic and just really adds another level for Alabama. I think one of Gary or Brad or one of them says something like he is one of the best that I've seen when it comes to backs at Alabama in a long time. And that's a pretty impressive thing to say there, because there's been some impressive guys in the backfield wearing Crimson Tide as of late.
Yeah, I mean, look, Alabama has Bryce Young. They've got Will Anderson, but sometimes I wonder if Jahmyr Gibbs is Alabama's best player in 2022. I mean, he carried them the last 2 games when Bryce Young wasn't available, right? And he is just so consistent. He's so explosive. I mean, some of the smoothest running, some of the niftiest footwork that I've ever seen from a running back in the Nick Saban era, which is obviously saying something. I mean, you're talking about the likes of Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, Derrick Henry, Eddie Lacy. I mean, Najee Harris, obviously, who is fleet of foot. Jahmyr Gibbs is special. We heard about it all during the offseason in the first couple of games. It took a little while for him to get going out of the gate, but this stretch that he has had in SEC play when the competition has got even better, it's been amazing to watch him because he could literally score on any play, and sometimes you think he's going to as long as he touches the ball. So good for Bill O'Brien in terms of getting him the ball, getting your best player, put the ball in his hands, let him make a play, give your team an opportunity to potentially win the game with Jahmyr Gibbs running the ball. He's amazing.
Yeah, it certainly is. But let's talk about big picture here, Ben, because at the end of the day, this is a huge game, and I'm not taking away from it. It's the third Saturday in October. It's Tennessee. Tennessee's never beat Stick Saban until now, but it is a cross-divisional game. So when we talk about the big picture, when we talk about what things look like down the road, the West very much in reach. Alabama truly controlling its own destiny in that regard. We never know how the playoffs going to play out, what the committee's going to, I know we're talking big picture here right now. I know this is way down the road, but what the committee is going to, put an emphasis on, whether it's conference championships or a regular season or whatever. But right now, Alabama is still very much in control of their future, despite a 3-point loss to an undefeated Tennessee team.
100%. I mean, look, every game now is the national championship for Alabama. They can't lose for the rest of the season, or that means they didn't win a national championship in 2022, right? And so, of course, if they lose another regular season game, they're basically out of the picture. Maybe some situations line up or scenarios line up where they can sneak into the playoff. Who knows? Maybe they can still sneak into the SEC championship and either beat Tennessee again or beat Georgia, depending on who comes out of the East. But yeah, look, we've seen it before. It happened last year. This is very familiar to Alabama fans right now. How did last year's game against Texas A&M end? Right? With a kick as time expired and they lost the game. Alabama wins the rest of their games. They go to the SEC championship. They win that. And they go to the playoff and play for a national championship. So Alabama fans are seasoned enough at this point. I mean, it's the end of the world right now, okay? Sure. But give them the 24-hour rule in reverse, right? When you win, you have a 24-hour rule. Give them the loss too. Everybody knows, though, that if Alabama loses a regular season game, that is not the end of the world, really, big picture-wise, and everything is still in front of them. They've just got to win. And their schedule is favorable. I mean, they're going to have a tough game next week against Mississippi State. I mean, Auburn was terrible last year, but they gave Alabama a game last year, right? So anything could happen in the SEC. If you don't bring it, you're playing SEC caliber teams each and every week. Injuries obviously happen. Look, Bryce Young basically just missed 2 games. So who knows what's going to happen. But I know that Nick Saban likes to use these moments as teaching opportunities for his players. I think he kind of, in a weird way, looks forward to losses, at least not in the sense that he wants to lose, but he wants an opportunity to teach these young men how to overcome adversity. He's got his opportunity now, so we'll see how this team responds. They did it last year. Can they do it again this year?
I love this, Ben. I mean, I know this is like free therapy that you're handing out right now, but it's true. Everything that you're saying. I mean, you think back to the Texas A&M game. I wasn't even thinking there, but it's totally true. Alabama still goes on to compete for a national championship despite that in-division loss against Texas A&M. So, I mean, do the bragging rights hurt? Does the rivalry, does it hurt to not be able to crap on Tennessee fans or, for the next 365, whatever it is? I mean, it sucks. It sucks. And as an Alabama fan, speaking for Alabama fans, not myself, but it's a difficult situation.
They'll crap on them anyway. That's just the nature of this, right? But look, there are most young millennials, most Gen Zers, they don't care about this rivalry. It hasn't mattered for 15 years, right? It's been all about the Iron Bowl. It's been all about LSU. I mean, Ole Miss has probably been a bigger rival for Alabama than Tennessee has, because you're talking about 2 decades. I mean, think of all that's happened in the last 16 years since Tennessee. Like, there were no iPhones the last time Tennessee beat Alabama. There was no Twitter. There was no Instagram. Like, there was no TikTok, obviously. So, I mean, we've seen advances in technology. We've seen the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've seen so many things in our history unfold in the span of almost 2 decades. So it had to happen eventually, right? Tennessee was going to win again. You just didn't want it to be tonight. And you didn't want it to be any night. But look, that place is up in a cloud of smoke right now. It was bound to happen. I'm kind of glad it's in Knoxville. Tuscaloosa is going to be a quiet place tonight. But look, they could use the night off after that. I mean,
they probably could. I'll say this. I am looking forward to seeing that November 5th game between Tennessee and Georgia that will very likely determine the SEC East. Ben, you said a minute ago, before we let y'all go, Saban uses moments like this as learning moments. And for me, I think there's a lot of different things you can point to in terms of what Alabama needs to clean up, and what could kind of be reassessed. What do you point to as the biggest thing in terms of the Tide being able to move forward and be successful as they now host Mississippi State, go to LSU, always a hostile environment, and then, of course, at Ole Miss before the Iron Bowl?
How do you respond? Everything is on the line now. Like, the stakes literally cannot get higher. If you lose, you have to think my season is over. But we have the national championship right in front of us if you're Alabama, right? Like, it's still there. So can Nick Saban communicate that to them? He obviously is somebody who is process oriented. Every single play counts. Focus on the play in front of you. Don't focus on the results or the scoreboard or whatever. Everybody here knows what Nick Saban preaches. Now, to me, Simone, like, I see the penalty problem as being something that could long-term really hurt Alabama. Because, again, I know that Alabama fans who are watching this on television, they saw another stat that CBS showed on the screen. Alabama had at least 6 penalties in every game this season. Now, 17 is a long way from 6, but that is an alarming trend, right? Again, they had 7 in the first quarter today. 7 in the first quarter. So we talked about this after the Texas game too. Like, we joked about it, but this is a real problem for Alabama. Like, not a concern, not an alarming pattern. Like, this isn't alarm bells going off. This is a problem. And it's one thing if you commit the occasional false start and a fixable penalty, as Nick Saban likes to say, but Alabama does it across a broad spectrum. Holding, blocks in the back, pass interference, and worst of all, really worst of all, they occur at critical times in the games, right? Like on a defensive 3rd or 4th down, when Alabama makes a positive offensive play, when they score a touchdown on the 1-yard line, which is what they did tonight. And let me just run through some quick stats real quick. Alabama in 2018, 6 penalties a game. In 2019, 7 penalties a game. 2020, 6 penalties a game. 2021, 7 penalties a game, right? So this is pretty consistent over the last half decade for Nick Saban's teams. And in 2022, before today's game, before they had 17 penalties, Alabama was averaging 8 penalties a game for 2022. So that's what I'm focused on right now. Can they clean that up? If they do, then they're a better team.
And it's just, I mean, I know you read off all those stats. It just seems like uncharted territory, though, for Nick Saban Alabama teams, because it feels like these are very high disciplined teams. And I think that what you pointed to a moment ago is really the true tale here on this, though, is that it's when they occur in most critical moments, against either Texas, against Tennessee, when you're like, wow, we're against Texas A&M, when you're like, this can't happen here, and that's when it's happening.
Alabama had the game won, right? At least everybody thought before they called pass interference. Kool-Aid McKinstry intercepts the ball in the end zone. He's running it towards the opposite side of the field, and everybody thinks the game's over. It's 4th down. Alabama intercepts the ball. It's over. No, they committed another penalty. It's the story of the game. It's the story of the season to a degree for Alabama. So they cannot do it anymore. I mean, really, you talk about disciplinary problems for the team. It's not just penalties. Think about the special teams play. Just a fatal mistake that led to another Tennessee touchdown when Quindarius Robinson touched the ball and obviously made it live, and Tennessee jumped on it, and they go and score another touchdown. So, look, the players are out there. They're executing the plan, and they're playing the game. But I think this reflects on the coaching. It reflects on Nick Saban. Look, with the penalties alone, Alabama has been bad the last few years. Again, you say that these things are fixable in press conferences, and maybe they are, and maybe they have been in the past. But at this point, the stats kind of speaks for themselves at this point, and their mistakes are translating into losses.
Yeah. Really, really great points, Ben. Appreciate all of your insight on this. Alabama is at home next week against 16th ranked, currently 16th ranked Mississippi State. We will see what the Tide can clean up, how things can get fixed here in the back half of the season, because there's no doubt it has to happen now. And if it doesn't, Alabama won't be playing for a national championship, and that's just the reality of the situation. So, guys, Alabama falls. It's crazy to say it, but Alabama falls to Tennessee 52-49, the final from Knoxville, Tennessee. Volunteer fans certainly celebrating with the cigars tonight. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning to the Alabama Postgame Show, brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. For Ben Flanagan, I'm Simone Eli. We will see y'all back here next week. Have a good night.